What's up, everybody, and welcome to Killing the Points game. We are going to take a moment away from credit cards and points and all things related to take a moment and focus on the CARES Act, or the stimulus bill that was passed on March 27th, 2020. Forgive me, I'm probably going to be looking down at my iPad a lot today, but there's so much to get through and I want to make sure that I get to everything that might affect all of you. I've been doing a ton of research over the last couple of weeks just to kind of stay, I guess, abreast of everything that's going on, and I want to make sure that you all know what's going on as well. So before I get started, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, hit the notification bell, and definitely comment down in the comment section, because I think this topic has so many different facets and there are so many different types of people, or people that are in different situations that are affected by this, that the comments could really be helpful for somebody who sees the comment, that sees that it's something that related to them. So first and foremost, just to kind of get this out of the way, for anybody who's wondering or stressed out about the fact that tax day is coming, it's actually not. So we've postponed until July 15th. Last I read, just about every state has adopted that. Probably by the time I post this, every state will have adopted this. So both federal and state taxes being postponed to July 15th. So worry not. Now, this is the culmination of a ton of research, and things are changing daily. So I just want to say before I get started that nothing that I'm saying here, I don't want anything to be held against me. I am reporting everything that I have read and everything that I have kind of tried to keep up on throughout all of this, but things are ever changing, and so these are the details as of now to the best of my knowledge, but just know that things are ever changing. So to start off with, the stimulus checks, or the $1,200 checks that everyone is talking about. Checks are going to start going out, it looks like as of April 9th. So the first thing and the most important thing is that you want to make sure that your direct deposit information is in with the IRS and the Department of Treasury. So direct deposits are going to actually start going out as of the 9th of April, and they're saying that they should have them done by the 24th of April. If you don't have your direct deposit information in, your paper check could take months to get. So make sure that you put in your direct deposit information. The Department of Treasury is still working on a website to basically allow people to input their direct deposit information if, say, the last time you filed, you got a paper check from the IRS. But as of now, it's looking like most likely paper checks will be very delayed. So the numbers: $1,200 per adult, $2,400 per couple, and $500 per child. So say a family of 4, 2 adults and 2 children, you'd be looking at $2,400 for the adults, $1,000 total for the children, getting you a stimulus check for $3,400. Now, you only qualify for those full amounts if your adjusted gross income is, for one adult, $75,000 or less, or $150,000 or less as a couple. I don't believe that the numbers affect children at all, but don't hold me to that. If your income as a single person is $99,000 or more, or $198,000 or more as a couple, then you no longer qualify for the stimulus checks. If you make anywhere between 75 and 99, or 150 and 198 as a couple, then you sort of get phased out. Basically, just kind of a sliding scale. So as a couple, at $150,000, you just start going down by the time you get to 198, and then you've got a $0 stimulus check. Moving on to unemployment insurance. So obviously right now, a lot of people are out of work. Myself, being a musician here in Los Angeles, I'm partially employed, partially self-employed, so this has become very complicated for me. I've been reading articles and doing research all day long to try to figure out what is even possible that I could qualify for. So for most of you, being employed people, unemployment is going to be the best way for you to get some money right now while you're not making a paycheck, assuming you're not making a paycheck. The period of time that you can qualify for unemployment has been extended by 13 weeks from 26 weeks, so now 39 weeks, or basically through the end of 2020. Now, this amount of unemployment varies by state. In California, the weekly maximum is $450. In New York, it's $504. There's all kinds of different numbers for each different state, so you got to check with your state's unemployment office to see what your weekly maximum is. Now, the CARES Act adds $600 a week for 4 months. Basically, it's going to be a few months worth of $600 per week added on top of that state maximum. So say in California, where the state maximum is $450 a week, if you qualify for half of that, then you're basically getting $225 per week, but plus $600 for the first 13 weeks or 4 months. Again, don't hold me to those numbers. But basically, you're looking at $825 a week instead of $225 a week that you might have qualified for, say you had applied last year in the current situation. Now, the federal tax rate on unemployment is 10%. Some states do charge taxes on unemployment. In California, we do not, but some states do. So you'll have to check what your state taxes will be. But for the most part, you're looking at between 10 and 15%. So for most people, that's actually less than you usually pay in taxes anyways. So the money that you're getting from unemployment, you'll actually pay less tax on than you're used to paying on your usual income. Now, for the self-employed out there, which, as I mentioned earlier, this is kind of where I fall into 60% of the time. Self-employed people are going to get half of your state maximum is going to be your maximum. So in California, a self-employed person, your maximum weekly amount is $225. So, but that's plus the $600 for the 4 months. So you will qualify for $225 per week at a maximum plus the $600. So up to $825 per week as a self-employed person. This is unprecedented because as far as I know, this has never happened before. Self-employed people have never been able to get unemployment because you don't pay into unemployment. If you have an employer and you look at your pay stubs, you'll see that you're paying into unemployment. Self-employed people don't. So this is a wonderful opportunity given the current situation that is obviously not wonderful. So regardless of whether you have lost all of your pay or only partial pay, if you're usually working 40 hours a week and now you're working 20 hours a week, there are so many clauses in this bill. It's 880 pages long. I've read some of it, but definitely not all of it. Just apply. There's also usually a 1 week waiting period for unemployment, and that has been waived. So that's wonderful news. Also, there is usually a stipulation with unemployment that you have to be willing and able to look for work. That has also been waived right now, given the fact that for most of us, willing and able to work means putting ourselves in harm. So that has been waived. Also, you can technically backdate your unemployment to January 27th. That's the date that they have set as, I guess, the most likely date when people might have started to become affected by this. So it can't hurt to backdate your financial hardship and try to potentially get back pay for previous weeks that you lost income. When in doubt, apply. Everyone's situation is different. It can't hurt to put in an application. So again, as I mentioned earlier, I am partially employed and partially self-employed, a sole proprietor, if you will. So that second half of me is wondering, okay, so am I going to get unemployment? Am I not going to qualify for unemployment? Am I going to qualify for half of it? Who knows if this is even going to come close to what I usually make per month? So we have avenues that we can go down as well. Whether you're partially or fully self-employed, you can apply for SBA loans. This is the Small Business Administration. SBA.gov is the website. You can go onto the website. There's tons of information, but I'm going to try to break it down the best I can right here. So I'm going to focus on the two most important things that I think will affect people the most. There's bridge loans and there's debt calculators and debt ways to kind of get debt covered, but I'm not going to talk about those. I'm going to talk about the economic injury disaster loans and the Paycheck Protection Program. So first of all, in order to qualify, you have to have 500 or less employees. This does include sole proprietors, independent contractors, and self-employed persons. When you're doing the application, it's going to ask you for your EIN number. If you're self-employed, if you're a sole proprietor, if you don't have an S-Corp, you're not going to have an EIN. So put in your social security number. It is exactly the same length, the same number of digits. Be honest on the applications. There's no sense in not being honest. If you're going to qualify, you're going to qualify. If you don't, you don't. So EIDL loans, otherwise known as economic injury disaster loans. The first $10,000 of this, which you do have to request, there's actually a little checkbox on the application you have to request, comes in the form of a $10,000 grant. Yeah, $10,000 grant, so money that you don't have to pay back. Technically, you can apply for up to $2 million of an economic injury disaster loan, but that first $10,000 is supposed to come in the form of a grant, and you're supposed to be able to get it within 3 days of application. So anything over $10,000 is not forgiven. It looks like we're looking at 3.75% interest rate for small businesses and 2.75% for nonprofits. We're looking at a 6-month deferment that can be requested, and you have up to 30 years of a repayment term. That brings us to PPP loans, otherwise known as the Paycheck Protection Program. This is a slightly larger loan that you can get, up to $10 million. It's basically based on 2.5 times your payroll. So the payroll is the biggest thing that these loans are targeting. It's basically for either sole proprietors or businesses, self-employed people that either need to pay themselves or pay their employees. So it's meant to basically sort of float you for about 8 weeks that can be forgiven. Past that, we're kind of waiting on further details. So according to the bill, your loan can be forgiven if it's used for payroll costs, interest on mortgages, rent, and utilities. However, it does stipulate that you have to use at least 75% of the loan over that period for payroll. And in terms of payroll, we're talking about $100,000 or less per employee. So you can't just pay an employee $500,000 and expect for that to be forgiven. As of right now, this is only covering you up to 8 weeks. I don't actually know what the start of that 8 weeks is, whether it's the day you applied, whether it's the day you say you started with hardship, but the way that the verbiage is as of right now is that in terms of the forgiven amount of this loan, it can only be up to 8 weeks. So basically 8 weeks of payroll. These loans will have a 2-year maturity, and as far as everything I can tell right now, they're looking at 1% interest rates. I even saw some that were at 0.5%. This is unprecedented. So even if you do need to take out a loan that is far beyond 8 weeks, or a loan that is, far beyond what they will forgive, you're talking about a business loan that is almost charging you no interest at all, and therefore allowing you to keep your business afloat and pay your employees, pay your rent, pay your mortgage, pay your utility bills at almost no interest cost to you. Now, the reports of these numbers keep changing, so again, don't quote me on these things. I'm just going based on what is available today. As far as PPP goes, it is going to be live as of April 3rd for small businesses and nonprofits, as of April 10th for independent contractors and self-employed. Again, much like unemployment, if you're in doubt, just apply. As far as I can tell, even if you apply and are denied for a loan for your business, that first $10,000 of the grant on the economic injury disaster loans, you still get that. So again, these details are kind of vague at this point, and we don't know for sure until they start actually submitting these loans and submitting paychecks or submitting checks to people. But that's what the verbiage says. Okay, on to the next topic, mortgage deferments, or for many of us, hopefully help with our rent. So check with your lenders because there's no federal mandate as of yet. However, most lenders are offering programs where mortgage holders can defer or forbear their loans with the bank up to 90 days. You can request for 90 days, and then you can actually potentially request for 90 more days. Now, it is important to note how this actually is worded in what you apply for with the bank. You want to make sure whether you know that it's forbeared, deferred, or waived. I highly doubt that any banks are going to actually waive any of your loans or any of your mortgages. However, the difference between forbearance and deferment, because if you're forbearing the loans, you're just basically freezing what your payments are, and then you're going to just pick up payments later. If you defer your loans, technically then they could say, right when you come back, you owe us all that money right away for, like, say the 90 days or 180 days that you didn't pay. Or they could just tack on a massive payment that you owe right at the end of your, say, 30-year mortgage. Regardless of whether you're forbearing or deferring or whatever it says with your mortgage lender, make sure you check the details. Now, they did kind of separate this out with people that have rental properties. So if you have 4 or less properties, you qualify for that 90 and 90, the 90 days and then potential for 90 more days. However, if you have 5 properties or more, say you own a 10-unit apartment building and you rent out all 10 of those units, you're actually only able for, based on what I can tell, for 30 days, not for 90 days. Now, as a renter, ask your landlord. It can't hurt to ask them, If they don't know that they can go to their lender and ask for forbearance or deferment of their loans, these details are just coming out day by day, so it can't hurt to ask. And if they get forgiveness, or if they get some sort of forbearance or deferment on their loans, then they might be able to pass that on to you as the renter, so that you don't have to pay rent when you're struggling to make payments on everything else you've got going on right now. Again, when in doubt, apply. Okay, that brings me to student loans. As of March 13th, everything kind of changed with student loans. Now, this only applies to federal student loans, not private loans. If you do have private loans, it can't hurt to reach out to your banks, Sallie Mae, Wells Fargo, whoever you have loans through, but most of these programs are not going to apply to you. But as for federal loans, as of March 13th, all payments are going to be stopped until September 30th. So basically, you are not going to owe a penny on your student loans for the next 6 months or so. Now, the same goes for interest. No interest until September 30th. Now, you might find yourself thinking, I'm doing okay financially. I'm still getting paid. I'm not being affected by a lot of this. I'm working from home. I'd like to still keep paying on my student loans, and you definitely can. They're going to be automatically stopped, but that doesn't mean that you can't make payments just directly to your lender. Check the website where you make your student loan payments. Assuming that you don't have much interest that is actually grown on your loans, you can make a payment to satisfy that interest, and then basically start paying directly to principal. So for the next 6 months, assuming that you can still afford it, every single penny that you put towards those loans would be direct to principal. So say your loans are at 6.5% and you've got a loan for, say, $100,000. You're probably growing interest each month of $400, $500. That $400 or $500 is basically being stopped now. So, any month prior to now, you were having to satisfy that $400 or $500 before you touched the principal of your loans. Now that basically has stopped. So for the next 6 months, if you can say put $1,000 a month towards your loans, that's $6,000 that's going direct to your loans instead of half of it being eaten up by interest. This is amazing. As I said earlier, auto pay is automatically turned off, but that doesn't mean that you can't contact your lender and basically get it turned back on. You're not going to pay any interest, but you can continue to make automatic payments direct to your loans, which is going to be direct to principal most likely, unless you've got a ton of interest that's grown on your loans. For anybody who's not really struggling right now, I see this as a wonderful opportunity to make extra payments towards your student loans that are going to be direct to principal, therefore in the end drastically lowering the amount of time that it's going to take for you to pay off your student loans. Okay, the last thing that I'm going to mention in relates to the CARES Act is charitable contributions. So there are a bunch of clauses in this act that affect how much you can contribute and what is deductible and or not. So there is a federal income tax deduction for charitable contributions that is usually 60%. Now this is based on your AGI, your adjusted gross income. Usually you can only deduct up to 60% of your AGI. Due to this bill for this year, you can now deduct up to 100%. So say you're quite wealthy and you make $1 million per year, you could technically deduct $1 million. You could donate $1 million to the Red Cross and basically deduct all your adjusted gross income for this year. For those of us that are not millionaires that do still want to make a charitable contribution given everything that's going on, the act basically allows you to have a $300 charitable contribution that is treated as an above-the-line deduction, meaning that you don't have to itemize in order to claim the deduction. You can still claim your $12,200 standard deduction, and then above that, be able to deduct $300. So essentially, you'd be deducting $300 of your taxable income by donating $300 within this year. So say unemployment, SBA loans, everything that you've applied for has really just not been enough for you to get by. Say you have really high expenses and it's just not been able to cover everything, and you have to start dipping into your emergency fund. I recommend that you only dip into it kind of on a case-by-case basis as your costs keep coming in. So maybe month by month, that way you leave as much of your emergency fund in the account that it's in. Only pull out what you need. Don't just pull out one massive lump sum. Say you happen to run through all of your savings and you're having to start to look at investments, things like your 401k or your Roth IRA or your standard IRA, wherever you have invested for retirement. There are a lot of things that have been put into place right now to allow you to pull money out of those. Now, obviously, this is like last resort. We don't want to tap into this money based on where the market is at right now. We don't want to pull out because we're basically just going to take all of those losses and lose anything that we could potentially get as the market recovers. So, but look into the details because, first of all, for example, in a Roth, you can withdraw any money that you've contributed with no fee. But day by day, things are changing, and they might change the rules that allow you to pull out even earnings out of your Roth or your 401k without fees. But again, to reiterate, pulling out from a 401k or Roth or any sort of retirement account that you have is the last resort. After unemployment, after any sort of government loans that are an extremely low interest rate, I think that this is the last thing that you need to tap into. All right, that's it for today. I hope that this helped. I know it was a lot of information. I will try to edit it down to make sure that this isn't a 30-minute video. Please subscribe to the channel. Please like this video. Turn on the notification bell. Please comment, because there's probably a lot of people that have questions about this still, and the more people that see comments, the more that it might, make them remember something or have a question themselves, and we can all learn from each other and hopefully get through this together. So stay safe, stay home, and be well.